The story begins in a luxurious hotel called Tan Duc Bao. Our protagonist is sitting in the bathroom, fiddling with his smartphone. From the messages on his phone, it seems the young man has just been dumped by his girlfriend. Staring at the screen, he's stunned and bewildered, unable to believe that after 100,000 years, he has finally returned to the exact moment in time when everything started. He recalls how his girlfriend, Lam Tay Tay, had managed to win over the wealthy young master Trong Quang, who then dumped him. However, what he didn't expect was that she had gotten pregnant with his child. When Trong Quang found out, he ordered his men to kill him. After his death, the protagonist was transported to another world. Fortunately, he acquired the 9 Heavens Divine Stone, which greatly boosted his cultivation, allowing him to reach the peak of a divine general. He ruled the other world for 1,000 years. But his cultivation stagnated. During his tribulation, his inner demons overtook him, causing him to fail, and his divine form disintegrated. However, his fate was not sealed. A fragment of his soul managed to defy destiny and reverse time, bringing him back to Earth. Not only did he return to the exact moment from his past, but he also brought the 9 Heavens Divine Stone with him. This meant he could start over and change his fate. After reflecting on everything that had happened, he realized he had run out of toilet paper. Outside, Trong Quang and Lam Tay Tay were still having a good time together. The protagonist couldn't help but wonder what had made him fall for such a woman in his previous life. Meanwhile, AD wondered if the young man had finished cleaning himself up. Sitting across from the couple, the protagonist noticed 3 stacks of money on the table. Lam Tay Tay told him he wasn't worthy of her and should take the 30,000 and get out of their sight. This woman, who had always been cold toward him, was now acting sweet and affectionate with Trong Quang, which disgusted him. She even flaunted the diamond ring Trong Quang had bought for her. But the protagonist only sneered. In this new life, he no longer cared about them. From this moment on, they were nothing more than insects in his eyes. Trong Quang, seeing the protagonist's attitude, became enraged, slamming the table and demanding an apology. One of his subordinates, a tall and burly man, walked up to the protagonist and repeated his boss's orders. However, the protagonist refused the money and wished them a life where they would grow old together. Never closing their eyes, he then casually turned and walked away. Of course, Trong Quang didn't let him leave so easily. He ordered his men to hold him down, demanding that he kneel and apologize, then lick his shoes clean. Only then would he be allowed to leave. Lam Tay Tay, following the pack, also joined in. The protagonist had no intention of engaging with them, but their pressure was so much that he couldn't ignore it. Trong Quang, clearly a fan of some legendary master, scratched his neck in a show of dominance. The protagonist, however, clenched his fist and then let go. He had initially considered teaching them a lesson, but then realized they weren't even worth his time. The black man, furious and eager to confront the main character, placed his hand on his shoulder. However, as soon as he did, he was met with a murderous glare that forced him to immediately step back. Both Trong Quang and Lam Tay Tay were taken aback by the intensity of that look. Despite this, Lam Tay Tay still viewed the protagonist as a useless young man, and his arrogant behavior made her want to challenge him. Provoked by his girlfriend's taunts, Trong Quang jumped to his feet, shouting that today would be the day he ended the main character. But as he rushed forward, he tripped and, with a loud crash, face-planted into the ground. His reputation was lost in an instant, and Lam Tay Tay hurriedly ran to his side to check on him. In her panic, she accidentally swallowed the insult, choking on it, though she couldn't get it out. Mortified and furious, she was deeply embarrassed in front of her ex-boyfriend. She shouted that their issues were far from over. Completely indifferent to the couple, had no interest in them anymore. After all, he had lost all his cultivation. What mattered now was to focus on cultivating again, earning money, and fulfilling his duty to his parents. After spending thousands of years in the other world, he wasn't sure how he would react when he finally reunited with his family. Having been reborn, he was determined to live a joyful and free life this time, vowing to surpass his previous cultivation and reach the peak of the vast universe. As he thought about his younger sister, who had suffered from tuberculosis for so long, he decided to go to the pharmacy. His greatest regret in his past life was watching his sister die from the disease. So in this life, he was determined to buy high-quality Ha-2O to heal her. With just enough money left to purchase the medicine, he waited for the shopkeeper, lost in thought. After living for thousands of years in the other world, The illness his sister suffered from now seemed like something he could easily treat. With just a dose of Ha-2-O, combined with the 9 Heavens Divine Stone and his advanced cultivation techniques, he could use his internal energy to heal her and finally rid her of the chronic illness that had plagued her for so long. After receiving the medicine, Lam Pham hurried back home. But instead of finding his sister, he encountered 3 thugs demanding that she open the door. He glared at them and asked what they were doing. Hearing his voice, his sister ran out of the house, her face filled with fear. Lam Pham immediately embraced her and reassured her. The bald thug, initially thinking it was someone else, was surprised to realize it was his useless older brother. Lam Pham then turned to the thugs, giving them a glare full of disdain that made them freeze in fear. The bald thug thought Lam Pham was just trying to intimidate him. But his body involuntarily took a step back. After a moment, the thug gritted his teeth and shouted, revealing that he had previously warned Lam Pham to move out within a week, or else there would be consequences. Lam Pham then remembered that this house had once belonged to his parents when they were married. Trong Quang's real estate company was now trying to develop the area. Taking advantage of the situation, Trong Quang had sent his thugs to harass the family, planning to demolish the house and offer a very low compensation. A group of scoundrels, to say the least. But what concerned Lam Pham most now was whether they were bullying his sister. His sister tugged at his sleeve, wanting to leave, thinking they couldn't stand up to the thugs. Lam Pham smiled gently and patted her head before asking how the thugs had treated her. She hesitated but then explained how one of the thugs had tried to undress her and touched her several times. Hearing this disturbing news, Lam Pham's face darkened in fury. He gritted his teeth, his veins bulging as anger surged through him. His heart burned with rage at the thought of his innocent sister being mistreated. He quickly gathered his energy and struck the bald thug with a powerful blow. The thug, terrified, turned pale, but there was no escape from Lam Pham's wrath. The thug was easily pinned to the ground, and the hand that had dared to touch his sister was swiftly crushed with a kick. He screamed in agony. Lam Pham was about to break his teeth, but the man struggled because he hadn't even had a chance to kiss him yet. After making all those mistakes, he still had the audacity to talk back. Lam Pham decided to blind him as well. The bald man finally realized the danger and immediately dropped to his knees, pleading, "Big brother, please spare me." The 2 men who had accompanied him, witnessing the brief exchange of martial arts, dared not speak a word. Once Lam Pham had vented his anger, he allowed them to leave. Before they went, all 3 of them politely apologized for causing trouble. Once inside, Lam Pham handed his sister some water and asked why she hadn't been going to school for the past few days. She coughed and replied that she hadn't been able to go for a week because she had fallen seriously ill. In his previous life, when his sister was sick, he had been so consumed by his heartbreak that he had ignored her. He had neglected her while obsessing over Lam Tay. Now, looking back, he realized just how selfish and irresponsible he had been. To make up for his mistakes, Lam Pham decided to get medicine for his sister, Ha-2-O, his sister. Innocently asking what it was for, was met with a smile as he told her to turn around without giving a direct answer. Though she didn't fully understand, she obediently followed his instructions. After a while, she began to show some reaction. Seeing this, Lam Pham focused his internal energy and soon his sister stumbled and fell into a deep sleep. Watching her breathe evenly in his arms, Lam Pham let out a sigh of relief. Nothing had gone wrong. After she woke up and rested, the illness would be completely cured. Later, Lam Pham bit his finger until it bled, using the blood to draw a protective talisman. This talisman would keep ordinary people at bay and protect her from any life-threatening danger. Once he confirmed that his sister was safe at home, he left, wandering through the streets with only $100 left to his name. Lam Pham realized he needed to find a way to make money quickly. Otherwise, he wouldn't even be able to afford a meal. With only $100 in his pocket, his best option was to gamble. Looking around at the bright, bustling city, Lam Pham decided to start his business, using the trick of getting something for nothing. A method he had learned from his master. As a cultivator with the ability to use the insightful eye, it was like releasing a tiger back into the forest. He walked into a casino, where the security guard, seeing his shabby appearance, was dismissive but still let him in. After all, every visitor was a customer, and even a poor one could bring in business. The guard gave him a ticket for the poor, which only made him poorer. As Lam Pham entered, he saw rows of gambling tables and a few girls standing around. But his focus was entirely on the chips on the tables. He imagined the luxurious life he wanted to provide for his sister. Spotting a table that seemed lively and promising big winnings, he confidently sat down. To the men at the table, Lam Pham looked like an inexperienced rookie, someone who had just escaped from a shelter. The staff, unsure how to handle such a naive, clueless kid, exchanged glances. One of the men, who had a squint in his eyes, explained that this was a VIP table and that, because Lam Pham was young and inexperienced, they wouldn't hold it against him. Lam Pham remained calm, opened a pack of cigarettes, and casually lit one. He looked at the man and asked, "Why is this table reserved for no more than 10 people?" The men behind him mocked him, calling him a country bumpkin who didn't know his place. They bragged that the 3 people sitting at the table were all influential figures in the underworld. One of the men, with a square face, turned to answer Lam Pham's question, saying simply, "Because you're not qualified." He casually tossed his pack of cigarettes aside, aware that no one in the room had the right to mention qualifications when standing in front of the god of destruction, himself. The third person at the table noticed the fluctuation of Lam Pham's internal energy, which was even stronger than his own. For the first time, he encountered such a powerful young individual. The old man grinned, thinking, "If I could recruit him, it would be the perfect addition to my team." To play with the 3 of them at this table, one would need to wager 1 million yuan. However, Lam Pham only had $100 left in his pocket. Where would he come up with $1 million? Hearing this, the other 2 men laughed loudly. Not only is he broke, but he dares to provoke the big bosses. He'll regret this later. A staff member sighed and muttered, "What a fool. He shouldn't have been let in." The squinty-eyed man slammed the table, demanding, "Who let this kid in?" A panting employee rushed over. He was the casino manager. The manager immediately pulled out a walkie-talkie and called for security. At this point, the old man spoke up and introduced Lam Pham as someone he had personally invited. He then handed over a 3 million yuan check. The onlookers were stunned, realizing that the young man had a powerful backer. The other 2 men, now aware of Lam Pham's connections, quickly switched their attitude, inviting him to join the game. Lam Pham glanced at them, extended his hand to accept the check, and thanked them. With 3 million yuan in hand, the young man confidently stated, "I'll pay you back in 1 round." The squinty-eyed man signaled the dealer to begin, determined to go all in against Lam Pham, while the young man admired the 3 million yuan in his hands. He didn't notice the dealer subtly manipulating the cards. The fake boss will have the highest hand, followed by Lam Pham, and then the others will bet against him, ensuring Lam Pham's loss. Although Lam Pham saw through the dealer's scheme, he remained silent, as he knew such petty tricks were no challenge for him. But fate had its own plans. The fake boss knew his hand was strong, but he hesitated to play it. The dealer couldn't believe it. She had a straight flush, the best hand at the table, but she didn't play it. It was clear now that Lam Pham's hand was unbeatable. The squinty-eyed man commented that his cards were good and decided to stay in, wanting to see whether the others would follow. Of course, Lam Pham stayed in, knowing his hand was the strongest. The squinty-eyed man, aware that Lam Pham didn't have much money, raised the stakes. The square-faced man, realizing that Lam Pham was serious, also decided to follow. But Lam Pham didn't have enough money to meet the new bet. He told them that if he lost, they could do whatever they wanted with him. Those around them assumed Lam Pham was asking for trouble, thinking there was no way he could win against these powerful players. The square-faced man then said, "Let's flip the cards." He wanted to see Lam Pham's hand. The dealer reluctantly opened the cards and announced that Lam Pham had won. The square-faced man slammed his hand on the table and stood up, his teeth grinding in frustration. He never expected to lose to a young man who still had the smell of milk on his breath. Furious, the squinty-eyed man raised the stakes again. His hand was a pair of jacks, thinking that wealth was his destiny. But Lam Pham had the aura of a protagonist. He was unbeatable. Lam Pham's hand was all aces. Trying to beat him with a pair of jacks was pure foolishness. The manager, now drenched in sweat, announced that Lam Pham had won a total of 208 million yuan in just that 1 round. Having won, Lam Pham stood up, brushed himself off, and prepared to leave. However, the squinty-eyed man refused to let him go so easily. He threatened that Lam Pham would be dead by the end of the night. Only when the fake boss intervened did the man reluctantly sit back down. Lam Pham placed 3 stacks of money on the table and said, "Here's the 3 million yuan I owe you. Consider it paid." He handed Lam Pham his business card, signaling his intention to form a friendship. Lam Pham quickly assessed that this man was no ordinary person. Only high-ranking retired government officials could remain in the Tien Du area. Today, Lam Pham owed him a favor, and he promised to repay it whenever the opportunity arose. The man nodded and then called someone named Tiu Nin to escort Lam Pham home. Meanwhile, the scene shifted to Trong Quang and Lam Tay Tay. Trong Quang was still furious and couldn't shake his anger, so he decided to call an older colleague to handle Lam Pham. Watching the two of them getting too cozy was making AD uncomfortable. At that moment, Lam Pham was being escorted home by someone working for the fake boss. Tiu Nin, the escort, mentioned that his boss referred to Lam Pham as a master and that he should learn from him. The young man casually puffed on a cigarette and waved his hand modestly, refusing to accept the compliment. Suddenly, an unfamiliar number appeared on Tiu Nin's phone. The person on the other end claimed to have been attacked and insisted that his big brother needed to take action. Tiu Nin asked for the address of the person who called, but he didn't realize that the caller was Lam Pham himself. Sitting right beside him, the caller was Trong Quang, who, along with his men, was blocking the entrance to Lam Pham's house but hadn't dared to enter. Seeing his underlings hesitating, he decided to hold off since Tiu Nin was conveniently nearby. As Lam Pham got out of the car, he immediately ran into Trong Quang's men. As soon as Trong Quang saw him, he boasted that he had called Tiu Nin and said Lam Pham would soon be taught a lesson. Alongside him was Lam Tay Tay, who, like a loyal sidekick, followed along without question. When Tiu Nin arrived, the person who had been attacked pointed at Lam Pham and claimed he was the one who had hurt him, urging Tiu Nin to make Lam Pham crawl for what he had done. At this moment, the young man with white hair finally realized that the person he was about to beat was a special guest of the fake boss. Lam Pham, however, didn't rush to retaliate. He let Trong Quang finish speaking while the bickering couple, still clueless, continued to run their mouths, praising Tiu Nin as they tried to provoke him. Their constant chatter was more irritating than a broken camera in the neighborhood. Though Lam Tay Tay was eager to continue her taunting, it was time to take action. Tiu Nin, rolling up his sleeves, was ready to step in. But the one who would be taking the hit wasn't Lam Pham, it was Trong Quang. One slap sent him reeling, another made him dizzy, a third had him completely stunned, and a fourth slap knocked him to the ground, leaving him dazed and confused, unable to understand why his big brother was hitting him. Tiu Nin yelled at him, calling him blind for daring to offend the guest of the fake boss, and warned him that he must be seeking death. Trong Quang was in shock when he realized that Lam Pham had connections with such a high-ranking figure. He was forced to kneel and apologize to Lam Pham. Not only Trong Quang but also Lam Tay Tay sat down in fear, shocked by the turn of events. But Lam Pham wasn't interested in arguing with mad dogs, he just wanted them gone. Seeing them still sitting there, Tiu Nin, now visibly annoyed, asked, "Are you waiting for me to invite you to dinner or something?" Trong Quang, trembling in fear, quickly turned around and ran off. Earlier, Tiu Nin had scolded Lam Pham over the phone. Unsure if Lam Pham would hold a grudge, he immediately apologized, not realizing who Lam Pham was. Lam Pham generously assured him, "It's fine, it's just a small matter. No need to worry." Tiu Nin was taken aback by Lam Pham's magnanimity, deeply impressed by his generosity. After everything was settled, Lam Pham opened the door to his house and found his younger sister. As soon as she spotted him, she stopped what she was doing and ran toward him. She immediately jumped up to pat his head and flashed a sweet smile. Lam Pham knew that winning 2 billion in a single game would surely make him enemies. But even if the entire world turned against him, it wouldn't matter. His only priority was to protect his sister's smile. The scene shifted to a luxurious villa by Heavenly Lake in the snowy mountains, which would become the new home for the two siblings. The previous place they lived in was in a chaotic area, unsuitable for his sister, so Lam Pham decided to move her here. His sister knew that the villa must be expensive, and given their family's poor financial situation, she commented that their previous home was good enough. Seeing how thoughtful and considerate she was made Lam Pham feel a pang of emotion. He reached out to reassure her, saying that earning money meant a villa like this was nothing to worry about. The little girl couldn't believe that one day, she and her brother would live such a wonderful life. Lam Pham lovingly patted her head and told her to go to bed so she could recover from her illness. Obediently, she ran off. In this life, Lam Pham now had the strength to protect those he cared about. and he vowed to leave no regrets behind. The next morning, Lam Pham woke up early to prepare his sister's favorite breakfast. After eating the sandwiches, pastries, and fruit, she would surely be happy. However, first, he decided to visit his university. He was still a student at Maou Medical University, and there were certain items on campus that could help him advance in his cultivation. So he was eager to check them out. After some time, Lam Pham arrived at the gates of Maou Medical University. Suddenly, a bald man called out to him, asking for help carrying some items to the tutoring room. When Lam Pham refused, the bald man became furious, lecturing him on the importance of helping others. Lam Pham wasn't interested and walked away, ignoring the bald teacher. Normally, even the principal would show respect to this man. But now, a student had dared to treat him like this. Unable to suppress his anger, the bald teacher grabbed Lam Pham's shoulder and threatened him, saying that if he didn't help, he would be expelled. Lam Pham calmly told him to let go. But instead of releasing him, the teacher tried to slap him on the head. Without looking, Lam Pham easily dodged the blow. He thought to himself, "You can touch anyone, but touching me is a mistake." Old man. After the teacher screamed in pain, Lam Pham casually walked away, leaving the man unconscious on the ground. Lam Pham had used only a light touch, but as a cultivator, it was enough to knock the teacher out. The teacher, now in agony, cried silently, unable to do anything but watch Lam Pham walk away. Lam Pham then made his way to the faculty office. In his previous life, he had taken a leave of absence due to issues involving Lam Tay, a woman obsessed with money. Looking back, it seemed utterly ridiculous. Given his reincarnation, he decided to officially re-enroll at the university. He approached his homeroom teacher and directly asked to complete the re-enrollment process. The teacher was surprised, as it hadn't been long since Lam Pham had taken a leave of absence. And now he was asking to return. The teacher was about to explain when a commotion outside distracted him. The bald teacher had returned, looking even worse with his hand bandaged. He came to complain to the homeroom teacher about how students were becoming increasingly violent and insisted that such students should be expelled. The homeroom teacher asked Lam Pham to wait for a moment, assuring him that he would approve his re-enrollment. Just as Lam Pham was about to leave, the bald teacher spotted him. Instinctively, he took a step back, his face filled with fear as if he had seen a ghost. However, Lam Pham didn't even acknowledge him. The bald teacher, unable to accept this, swore that this time, he would make sure Lam Pham was expelled. Watching the two of them act like a cat and a dog, the homeroom teacher was completely baffled and had no idea what was going on. After a round of gossiping and complaining, the bald teacher finally decided he wanted to expel Lam Pham and send him to a juvenile detention center. The homeroom teacher suggested they try to reconcile and that Lam Pham should apologize to the bald teacher so the matter could be forgotten. However, Lam Pham felt that someone like the bald teacher wasn't worthy of his apology. Despite the homeroom teacher's insistence, the bald teacher remained firm in his decision to expel Lam Pham immediately. Feeling powerless, the homeroom teacher sighed and made a decision. Lam Pham would have to take a year off from school. And he handed back his leave request form. Lam Pham angrily slammed his hand down on the desk, causing it to shatter into pieces. The two teachers were so shocked, they almost had an accident. Lam Pham then turned to the homeroom teacher, saying, "I haven't agreed to this decision yet." The homeroom teacher was furious, unable to believe that Lam Pham had the audacity to speak like this to someone in such a high position of authority. Even the principal had to show this teacher some respect. Yet here Lam Pham was treating him like this. Lam Pham thought to himself, "They think I'm being reckless, but I'll show them what real recklessness looks like." For now, though, he just needed to get his re-enrollment paperwork. The homeroom teacher continued to strongly oppose, declaring that Lam Pham would never be allowed to stay in the school. Not even for a single day. But Lam Pham didn't care. He nonchalantly turned and walked away, slamming the door behind him, leaving the two teachers seething with frustration. Lam Pham made his way to the school gates. He hadn't expected to use this favor so soon. The favor he was referring to was calling An Nin, a subordinate of the influential businessman Guy, to assist him. The scene then shifted to the principal's office. The principal seemed to be in a daze, looking completely out of sorts. Suddenly, his phone rang at the most inconvenient moment, and he became visibly annoyed. As he picked up the phone and started to curse, the voice on the other end made him fall silent. Realizing who he was speaking to, he immediately shut up. He was talking to Guy, the powerful businessman. Meanwhile, Lam Pham walked straight toward his class. Heading to Class A when he opened the door, he saw a beautiful girl by the window. This girl was Tiu Truc, his first love. Sadly, in his previous life, he had been foolish and let down such a wonderful girl. When Tiu Truc heard Lam Pham call her name, she turned around. He greeted her with a warm smile, saying, "I'm back." Surprised and filled with joy, Tiu Truc rushed over and hugged him tightly after so many days apart. He embraced her back and gently patted her head. Reflecting on his past life, Lam Pham realized how foolish he had been. This time, he was determined to make it right. However, just then, a young man stormed over, clearly upset, and demanded to know what they were doing. His classmates explained that his name was Ku Hang Tin, and everyone knew he had feelings for Tiu Truc. Now that Lam Pham and Tiu Truc were so close, it was like provoking him. Ku Hang Tin glared at them, walking over with a menacing attitude. But when he spoke to Tiu Truc, his tone completely changed. He asked her to step outside and talk to him privately. However, with Lam Pham standing there, why should she leave to talk to him? If he had something to say, they could do it right here. When his polite approach failed, Ku Hang Tin's mood soured, and he resorted to force. But before he could even touch Tiu Truc, Lam Pham swiftly waved his hand and shoved him away. Ku Hang Tin froze, utterly shocked by Lam Pham's sudden and forceful action. He gave him a warm, affectionate look, accompanied by a warning. Tiu Truc was not someone he could get close to. The guy laughed, thinking Lam Pham had no right to speak there. He assumed Ku Hang Tin was just a lovesick boy. But he was mistaken. He was more of an obsessive, intense type. Even Tiu Truc was trembling in fear from his threats. Lam Pham stood in front of her, shielding her, and said all kinds of reassuring words to calm her down. The guy was about to continue his nonsense. But when he saw the threatening glare from Lam Pham, he fell silent. He turned and challenged Lam Pham to hit him. Lam Pham thought the guy resembled an insect, wanting peace but having no other choice. Lam Pham fulfilled Ku Hang Tin's wish and kicked him straight in the chest. The powerful kick sent him flying across the room, crashing into the wall like a lizard stuck to glass. The guy had thought of himself as a tiger, but now he was nothing more than a fool. He didn't expect Lam Pham to be a martial artist and nearly had his arm broken. Thinking Lam Pham had just been lucky, he foolishly charged again. But when Lam Pham stepped forward, the guy's face went pale, and he stammered, begging for mercy. However, it was all a trick. When the opportunity arose, Ku Hang Tin charged once more, throwing a punch with his so-called special technique. As expected, he was thoroughly beaten, barely recognizable. Lam Pham grabbed his head and delivered a knee to his face. Just like a Muay Thai fighter. He then kicked his knees, forcing him to kneel and scream in pain. Seeing that Lam Pham wasn't going to stop, Ku Hang Tin finally admitted defeat. However, having lived for 1,000 years in another world, Lam Pham knew that showing mercy to an enemy was often cruel to oneself. So, he gave him one final hard blow to the head. Ku Hang Tin was now face first on the ground, with his backside in the air. He was truly someone who didn't know his limits. Tiu Truc, who normally saw him as just an ordinary guy, now saw Lam Pham as a hero, saving the day. She was a bit intimidated, unsure of how to react. After defeating the guy, Lam Pham turned to speak to her, his face radiating happiness. Just as they were talking, the class president, who wasn't part of their group, interrupted. He claimed that Ku Hang Tin's parents were influential, and as the class president, he had to get involved. He demanded that Lam Pham apologize to Ku Hang Tin if he wanted this situation to be resolved. If it had been the old Lam Pham, he might have agreed, but now that he had gained strength, he wasn't intimidated. Feeling more confident, Lam Pham engaged in a verbal battle with the class president and even dismissed his authority. The class president, feeling humiliated, turned and stormed off, but Lam Pham just looked at him as if he was nothing. Suddenly, the classroom door opened, drawing everyone's attention. It was Tan Tin, the homeroom teacher, asking what had happened. Unable to handle the situation himself, the class president reported that Lam Pham had knocked Ku Hang Tin unconscious. However, the teacher didn't immediately punish Lam Pham but instead asked him what had happened. Lam Pham feigned innocence, but class president pointed to Ku Hang Tin, still lying on the ground, unable to lift his head. As evidence, she told Lam Pham that if he didn't believe her, she could ask the whole class. The students in the class sat quietly, also caught up in the situation, and they jumped in surprise when the teacher asked what had happened. Nervously, They glanced at Lam Pham, but his warm yet stern gaze made them anxious. The teacher, thinking it was just a childish matter, called Lam Pham to her office for a conversation. When he left with a playful expression, the guy became furious. Unable to report to the teacher, he decided to call someone else. He dialed a man named Bok Ca and informed him that the homeroom teacher had called Lam Pham to her office. Bok Ca introduced himself as Bok Hoang, the leader of Maou Medical University, notorious for having affairs with young female teachers. He was a disciple of Jack 5, a controversial figure who had previously caused a stir before disappearing. Because of his influential family, the school had been unwilling to oppose him. Tan Tin, the teacher, was his next target. At the teacher's office, instead of scolding Lam Pham, Tan Tin asked him about his younger sister's health. Showing genuine concern, Lam Pham reassured her that his sister was feeling better and able to attend school normally. He wondered what the purpose of this meeting was. Tan Tin, with a blush on her cheeks, seemed to have developed feelings for him. After talking in circles, she finally asked if Lam Pham would consider moving in with her, though she clarified it was not a marriage proposal, but rather asking him to live with her. Lam Pham recalled that in his previous life, Tan Tin had let him stay at her place for a while. But now, he had the strength to take care of himself. Just as he was about to politely decline, the school bell rang. Embarrassed, Tan Tin quickly grabbed her papers and left, but not without discreetly slipping her home address into Lam Pham's hand. Eager for him to visit, before he had a chance to refuse, she had already left. Lam Pham planned to talk to her later when she had more time. As he walked out, he crossed paths with Bok Ca, but neither of them recognized the other. Bok Ca kicked open the door to Tan Tin's office, only to find that she was no longer there. However, using a device in his pocket, he managed to track Lam Pham's location. With a grimace, the device released a string of beads that hovered in the air, forming a portrait of Lam Pham. Upon seeing the image, Bok Ca swore to take revenge on anyone who dared to touch his woman. But Tan Tin was not his woman, and the final outcome remained uncertain. After punching the wall in frustration, Bok Ca's beads returned to him. He didn't leave immediately. Instead, he took a deep breath, savoring the chair where Tan Tin had sat. With a satisfied look on his face, he wondered if anyone else found this situation exciting. Lam Pham clearly wasn't interested. After leaving the office, Lam Pham headed to the library. In his previous life, he had come across an article about a professor at the school who was researching and developing special medicines. At the time, he hadn't paid much attention, but now it seemed these medicines might be similar to pills used by cultivation practitioners. The spiritual energy in the world was thin, and progress in cultivation was slow. If he could find these mysterious medicines, it would greatly aid his cultivation. While thinking about this, he heard someone call his name. It was Tiu Truck, who had coincidentally found him. She asked about the meeting with the homeroom teacher and was surprised when Lam Pham didn't tell her the whole truth, that the teacher had asked him to move in with her. At that moment, two unruly students approached Lam Pham, seeking revenge for their brother, Ku Hang Tin, whom Lam Pham had previously beaten. They thought his defeat was just a result of being ambushed, and they believed they could defeat him if they tried. One of them, a guy with unshaven stubble, was overly confident, thinking he could take Lam Pham down with one hand. As the two approached, Tiu Truck, frightened, called out to Lam Pham. The unshaven guy asked Lam Pham his name, but his hand was already moving too far. Lam Pham saw through his intentions and, with just one hand, made the guy's face turn pale with fear. Lam Pham gave him a cold warning, but the guy didn't take it seriously. Still determined to test him, he lunged at Lam Pham with a wild attack, but Lam Pham easily dodged, causing the guy to lose his balance and fall forward. He never expected Lam Pham's speed to be so fast and dangerous. With a single punch, a tooth was knocked out. Now he'd have to spend 3 million to get a replacement. On top of that, his body was sent spiraling through the air, spinning like an unemployed ballet dancer. Lam Pham turned to look at the other guy, who immediately began trembling in fear. The man, clearly trying to apply the strategy from Sun Tzu's Art of War, thought that the best option from the 36 strategies was to retreat. He and his companion quickly carried off the lazy shaver, fleeing in haste, and even promised a rematch with Lam Pham in the future. Unfortunately, the guy who had been chatting with a girl had his moment completely ruined. At this point, Tiu Truck finally spoke up, asking how Lam Pham had become so incredibly strong. Lam Pham jokingly claimed it was because Zon Tok Du had taken over his body. Tiu Truck wasn't fooled by that, though. Rather than pressing further, she changed the subject and invited him to dinner. Lam Pham declined, saying he had something to take care of. He needed to meet with his homeroom teacher. Tan Tin, sensing Tiu Truck's sudden change in mood, Lam Pham quickly rearranged their dinner for tomorrow, showing just how skilled he was at managing these situations. He playfully called her Great Beauty, which flustered her, making her respond by lightly hitting him a few times. After parting with Tiu Truck, Lam Pham made his way to Tan Tin's house using the address she had given him. When he rang the doorbell, Tan Tin, who was cooking, quickly rushed to open the door and invited him in. She told him to make himself comfortable while she finished preparing dinner. Watching her cook while humming happily reminded Lam Pham of his past life. She had been the only one to treat him kindly back then. But one day, out of nowhere, she had fallen from the top of the Kin Mao Da Sha building. And the police had labeled it as a simple suicide. In this life, Lam Pham vowed he would never let anything like that happen again. Lost in his thoughts, he didn't realize that Tan Tin had called his name several times to bring him back to the present. He pushed aside the past and joined her at the dinner table. During the meal, Tan Tin asked him what he thought about her earlier suggestion. Lam Pham responded that he had already found a job, and due to his financial situation, his boss had arranged for him to stay in the staff housing. Tan Tin seemed slightly embarrassed by the indirect refusal but still offered to help him in the future if he ever needed it. Lam Pham, unaware of her feelings, happily accepted her offer. After the meal, he didn't bother washing the dishes, leaving them soaking in the sink. He really could be a bit lazy sometimes. When he was about to leave, Tan Tin offered to walk him a little way to help with digestion. They walked through a park filled with fragrant flowers and the sound of birds chirping. They strolled happily, unaware that someone was watching them from the bushes. Filled with resentment, just as they were enjoying their conversation, the rustling in the bushes caught Lam Pham's attention. He casually picked up a stone and tossed it. The stone hit its mark, causing Bok Xie to stumble out of the bushes and land face first in front of Lam Pham and Tan Tin. It was an utterly humiliating fall, and he found himself in an even worse situation. Tan Tin, startled by his sudden appearance, looked at Bok Xie with fear in her eyes. He shot her a disdainful look, similar to the one he had given her before. Before she could warn Lam Pham, Bok Xie had already appeared in front of him, clearly prepared to attack. Tan Tin, fearing for Lam Pham's safety, stood frozen. Bok Xie grabbed Lam Pham by the neck and threatened Tan Tin, saying that if she didn't submit to him, he would harm Lam Pham. But just as Bok Xie finished his threat, Lam Pham grabbed Tan Tin's hand and started walking away. Bok Xie, stunned and confused, realized that he was holding nothing but air. Lam Pham had already slipped away, leaving him in a state of complete disbelief. Frustrated, he leapt up and attempted a sneak attack from behind, expecting to land a fatal blow. But Lam Pham simply waved his hand, sending Bok Xie flying far away. He crashed into a pillar, spitting blood, the consequences of his arrogance. This was the price for talking too much, and Lam Pham had effectively silenced him with a single gesture. Bok Xie never anticipated that Lam Pham had already achieved the strength of the body refining realm. Even the entire medical university feared that no one could match him. Unfortunately for Lam Pham, despite not provoking anyone, he was still pursued by a mad dog like this. Tan Tin felt uneasy after hearing the threats, but Lam Pham reassured her. Bok Xie knew that his physical strength wasn't enough to make a real impact. So he took out a special item, a rosary. When he saw Lam Pham pour a bit of chili sauce on it, Lam Pham immediately recognized it as a spiritual tool, extremely rare in this world. The tool produced 3 demonic faces, but they weren't particularly intimidating. In fact, they were far less frightening than the lion at Adi's house. The demonic faces followed Bok Sa's commands and charged toward Lam Pham. He didn't evade them but instead allowed them to pierce through his body. The other man grinned in satisfaction, thinking that his attack had landed. The tool he was using was called the 9-Demon Pearl. After the attack, it reverted back to its ordinary form as a rosary. No longer glowing, the 9-Demon Pearl had been a birthday gift from the patriarch of the Bok family. By using blood to nurture it, the hidden evil flame could be unleashed. With this technique, Bok Xie had sent countless masters of the body refining realm to their graves. He was confident that this fight was already won, believing that Lam Pham was just another person with the strength of the body refining realm. However, Bok Sa's attack had no effect on Lam Pham. He couldn't believe his eyes when Lam Pham emerged completely unharmed. The demonic faces were instantly crushed by Lam Pham's true form from another dimension. As easily as Tran Quoc Ton crushing an orange. To think that Bok Sa considered this his secret technique, it was truly disappointing. The very idea of trying to kill the soul of an immortal with such a weak attack was laughable. His arrogance deserved to be burned to ashes. He went into a frenzy, unable to comprehend how Lam Pham had endured his full strength strike and remained standing. Enraged, he leapt to deliver a finishing blow, thinking that he wouldn't cry until he saw a coffin. But Lam Pham was ready to teach him a lesson. With a snap of his fingers, a blue aura enveloped his body. This was true power, not the weak trick Bok Sa had used. Before Bok Sa could even process what was happening, he was surrounded and attacked. With no more tricks left, the man could only stand there, waiting for his inevitable end. Lam Pham didn't need to explain anything. People about to die didn't need to know too much. With a simple wave of his hand, a life was extinguished, powerless against the overwhelming force. No matter how much he resisted, Bok Sa had no choice but to perish. The blue energy made contact with him, setting his body ablaze. Moments later, Bok Sa was reduced to ash. Lam Pham paused before his spiritual tool, picked it up, and, as Tan Tin stood in shock, unable to process what had just occurred, he reflected on the situation. In a world where spiritual energy was depleting, acquiring a real spiritual tool was no easy feat. While this one was still somewhat lacking, it was better than nothing. He waved goodbye to Tan Tin, telling her she didn't need to see him off. As she watched him leave, she shouted a heartfelt thank you. Now, even she didn't know who Lam Pham truly was. Lam Pham walked straight back to his villa. When he entered, he was slightly surprised to see his younger sister still awake. Hearing her brother's voice, Hugh Deep suddenly woke up. She sat quietly, hugging a teddy bear, waiting for him to return. Lam Pham gently ruffled his younger sister's hair, urging her to go to bed. Obediently, she began to head back to her room. But she almost tripped, making Lam Pham's heart race in alarm. If he had a history of heart issues, he might have had a heart attack right then and there. He thought Hugh Deep had already fallen asleep. But suddenly, she poked her head out and called to him. Hesitantly, she asked if there was a class gathering next week and if she could attend. Before she even finished speaking, Lam Pham had already guessed what she was about to ask and smiled warmly, telling her that if she wanted to go, she could. Overjoyed, the little girl began jumping around excitedly, completely forgetting about sleep. Afterward, Lam Pham made his way to his room. He carefully examined the 9-demon pearl, a spiritual artifact. As it rested in his hand, it radiated a fiery orange-red aura. He sat down and began circulating his energy. Suddenly, his eyes widened in realization. He snapped his fingers, and when he opened his palm, a blue aura appeared, just like the one Bok Sa had used. The energy swirled erratically but was quickly contained by Lam Pham's protective barrier. Just as he had suspected, the 9-demon pearl contained a thread of spiritual energy. This was why Bok Sa, despite his lack of cultivation, was able to perform magical techniques. In the world of cultivation, there were 9 major realms: Qi refining, foundation establishment, core formation, nascent soul, immortal ascension, breaking void, Tao integration, creation, and the 9 heavens realm. The 9 heavens realm was the pinnacle, with the realms below it considered mortal and those above it regarded as immortal. The immortal ascension realm, as the name suggests, is when a cultivator's body is refined into the 9 heavens immortal platform. Once one reaches the 9th heaven, the realm is established, the heavens and earth are unified, and immortality is achieved. This realm is also known as the immortal being realm. In his past life, Lam Pham had reached the Tao integration realm. His name was known across 3.000 worlds, and by relying on the power of the great Tao, he defeated countless opponents. He roamed freely through the immortal world, never suffering a single defeat, and was revered by other immortals as the Heavenly Emperor, known as the first emperor of all time. However, after acquiring the 9 heavens divine stone, he was ambushed by other immortal lords who sought to steal it from him. In the end, Lam Pham was forced to face 36 immortal lords alone at the peak of the immortal world. The battle shook the heavens and drenched the land in blood. In his final moments, Lam Pham unexpectedly elevated the great Tao to its highest level, pulling the immortal lords into his own immortal kingdom, where all 36 were annihilated. After the battle, Half of the immortal world was turned into a desolate wasteland. Lam Pham then fell into heavenly punishment and was reincarnated as Lam Pham in this life. In this life, Lam Pham was determined to push every cultivation realm to its ultimate limit and eventually return to the immortal world. The first step in his journey was to harness the spiritual energy within the 9-demon pearl. He used a technique to absorb the energy into his body. After some effort, the spiritual energy merged with him. Suddenly, Lam Pham's eyes snapped open. He had finally entered the chi refining realm. In his past life, he had been too preoccupied with dealing with other immortal lords to fully cultivate the techniques within the 9 heavens divine stone. But this time, he was committed to mastering them. Meanwhile, his little sister, completely unaware of what was happening, continued to snore peacefully. An hour later, Lam Pham was breathing heavily, grinning with excitement like a child who had just discovered a new toy. The power of this immortal technique was extraordinary. With this technique, Lam Pham could now dominate the world as easily as solving a simple equation. At that moment, in an unknown location, an old man with a long beard that reached his hair was meditating amidst a pile of skulls and bones. Suddenly, a large amount of blood poured from his mouth. As he tried to understand what was happening to him, he realized that the aura of the 9-demon pearl had disappeared, indicating that Bak Xie had met his end. The old man was filled with rage and swore to exact vengeance on the family of the person who had sold his grandson. This individual was likely a disciple of the bone spirit, as he had been using dry bones for cultivation. With Bak Xie's death and the destruction of his magical artifact, the old man vowed that he would not rest until he avenged this wrong. The following day, at school, Lam Pham walked along the campus, deep in thought about how his cultivation had progressed the previous day. However, he knew that Bak Xie was not someone to be underestimated, and he feared that trouble would come looking for him in the future. While he was lost in his thoughts, Tiu Truck approached and asked how he had been feeling these past few days. Seeing that Lam Pham seemed perfectly fine, the class monitor grew increasingly frustrated. Both Bak Xie and the headmaster had failed to do anything to him. The man beside him was even more upset. The previous day, they had tried to trap Lam Pham, but the result was that he had neutralized them, forcing them to stand in place for an entire night in the library. This morning, when one of them had gone to find the headmaster, he had been thrown out. Before, whenever Lam Pham had encountered this classmate, he would lower his head and be deferential. But now, Lam Pham was standing tall, no longer intimidated. Even the girl the class monitor admired, Tiu Truck, was now in Lam Pham's company. Realizing that he could not approach Tiu Truck with Lam Pham around, the class monitor concocted a scheme. He waited for the moment when Tiu Truck would be alone, planning to make his move then. At that point, she would have no choice but to accept him. This was the class monitor's plan, born from his frustration at Lam Pham's presence and his inability to confront him directly. So, he decided to target Lam Pham's crush instead. Unaware of the class monitor's plans, Tiu Truck continued chatting with Lam Pham as usual. She reminded him of their previous plans to have a meal together. Lam Pham may forget many things, but he would never forget the promise to dine with the girl. He suggested they go to her family's restaurant since it was well known for its food. Upon hearing this, Tiu Truck blushed, but soon her expression turned to one of worry. Her parents had previously warned her not to get too close to Lam Pham, claiming that he was too poor and not worthy of her. But things had changed. Lam Pham was no longer the same person as before. In the end, the two of them went to Tiu Truck's family restaurant. When Tiu Truck's mother heard her daughter's voice, she cheerfully greeted her home. However, upon seeing Lam Pham, her attitude shifted drastically. She furrowed her brow and pulled Tiu Truck aside to speak with her privately. She had warned her daughter before to stay away from Lam Pham, but now Tiu Truck had brought him home. Tiu Truck explained that they were just friends and that Lam Pham was a good person. Her mother, insisting that it was for her own good, began criticizing Lam Pham, calling him unworthy of her daughter. Tiu Truck, usually polite and respectful, stood up for him. As the argument escalated, a loud noise suddenly interrupted them, drawing the attention of both Tiu Truck and her mother, as well as Lam Pham. 3 thugs on motorcycles suddenly burst into the restaurant, wielding iron rods. Without saying a word, they immediately began smashing up the place. Tiu Truck's father, frightened, rushed to negotiate with them, asking for some time since he didn't have the money at the moment. Instead of listening, the leader of the group lifted him up and threatened to kill him. Tiu Truck's father begged for mercy, explaining that if they killed him, they wouldn't get any money. so they should give him more time. Tu Truck and her mother watched in fear but were powerless to stop them. Because of that, the two of them caught his attention. Upon noticing the man's wife and child, the thug thought it would be amusing to cause some trouble for them over the next few months. So he decided to give the man a few days of peace. The man shouted urgently for the two of them to run, but when Long saw him grabbing the man by the neck, he realized it would only complicate things further, so he gently pushed him aside. Seeing the ridiculous expression on the thug's face, Tu Truck's mother stepped forward to protect her daughter. He reached out his hand to intervene, but was quickly stopped by Lam Pham. If anyone dared to harm his loved ones, he would show them just how serious he was. He ordered them to kneel and apologize, hoping the boy would show mercy. Tu Truck's mother was stunned by the foolishness of her future son-in-law. After breaking free from Lam Pham's grip, Long demanded to know what gave him the right to speak to him that way. Lam Pham replied that he wasn't even worth the time to explain. The thug laughed, thinking Lam Pham was just trying to impress him. Then, he turned to pick up the broken beer bottle, angry, and charged at Lam Pham to start a fight. The thug holding the broken beer bottle lunged toward Lam Pham, shouting loudly, "Take this!" Lam Pham glared fiercely, swiping his hand to shatter the beer bottle. The pieces flew in all directions. The thug stood there, dumbfounded. What is this? Several shards of glass flew back toward him. He cried out in pain as they hit his face. "My face!" Another thug, shocked, called out, "Boss!" The thug clenched his eyes shut in pain and shouted, "Sun K, deal with that guy." At his command, Sun K swung a punch at Lam Pham, wearing a sharp metal ring on his hand. "Take this punch." Tu Truck's mother held her daughter tightly, too terrified to watch. Tu Truck's father yelled, "Lam Pham," but unexpectedly, Sun K's punch never landed. Dust filled the air. Lam Pham stopped the punch with a single finger, and the sharp metal ring couldn't pierce his skin. The thug stammered in disbelief. How is this possible?" Lam Pham flicked his finger, shattering the thug's glasses. "Leave now." He flicked the thug aside, causing him to stumble backward, falling to the ground with a cry. Lam Pham just exhaled, muttering, "This is like throwing eggs at rocks. Foolish." As the dust settled, it was clear that Lam Pham had flicked Sun K to the ground. The gang leader turned to see Sun K unconscious and gasped. "Sun K!" Tu Truck, in her mother's arms, happily exclaimed, "Lam Pham, that was amazing." Tu Truck's father cheered. "Well done, great job." The thug leader grumbled angrily. "How dare you show off in front of me and treat my men like this?" His face was covered in fluid, his veins bulging. "I'm definitely going to teach you a lesson." He pulled out a fake gun from his jacket and aimed it at Lam Pham. "Go to hell." A bullet shot from the gun, speeding toward Lam Pham. He widened his eyes in surprise. But fortunately, his body reacted quickly. He dodged the bullet and immediately rushed toward the thug. With one hand, he grabbed the thug's mouth, causing his eyes to bulge in shock. The thug groaned in pain, still confused. "Who are you? I've been all over and never heard of anyone dodging bullets." Lam Pham coldly replied, "Who I am doesn't matter. Just know that in front of me, everything else is insignificant." He squeezed the thug's cheek tightly. The thug begged, "Please, be gentle." Lam Pham turned to the other two thugs and ordered, "Kneel and apologize." The two thugs, terrified of Lam Pham's overwhelming presence, immediately shouted, "Yes." Both of them knelt down, bowing their heads to Tu Truck's family. "We sincerely apologize." Lam Pham turned to Tu Truck's father, reminding him, "Uncle, if you gamble again, you won't be so lucky next time." The father, also intimidated by Lam Pham's strength, quickly agreed. Okay, I won't gamble anymore." Lam Pham threw the thug leader to the ground and coldly glared at him. "Leave now, don't come back. If you do," he shot a menacing look. "Warning, your life will be at risk." The two thugs hurriedly picked up their unconscious leader and fled, responding, "Yes." At that moment, Tu Truck's mother called out, Lam Pham." She thanked him. "You've saved our family. Tu Truck is lucky to have met you." Lam Pham just sighed and didn't respond. He turned to leave, saying, "I'm leaving. You all behave yourselves." Tu Truck looked at his retreating figure, pondering, "Lam Pham, who exactly are you?" Meanwhile, outside the city, under a clear sky with white clouds, the peaceful road seemed unaffected by the recent events. On the side of the road, two figures were walking. Gun Heen, visibly upset, said, "Tu Truck, that girl, dared to bring Lam Pham home. The man beside him agreed. If we hadn't followed them, we wouldn't have known. He suddenly proposed something malicious. Boss, let's take advantage of the situation and sneak in to take some photos. Then use them to blackmail her. If not, we can post them online for others to see. The boss nodded. Good idea. Gun-heen and his classmate were having a conversation when, suddenly, a group of thugs appeared. One of them suggested, Boss, take it slow. The leader, slightly amused, replied, Isn't that Brother Vong? The thug, surprised to see him, asked, Tiu Chung, what are you doing here? He started introducing Tiu Truck to the thug. Brother Long, I'm not just offering you any woman. This one is far more beautiful than the ones we introduced before. The thug, irritated, continued, and yet one of them doesn't know his place and steals her away. Vong, recognizing someone, started sweating and nervously said, You're not talking about that kid from the restaurant, are you? Another thug added, The kid with white hair? The leader responded excitedly, Yes, that's him. Unexpectedly, Gun-heen was struck by one of the thugs. His face turning to the side. He fell, clutching his face in pain and groaning. Angrily, he cut ties with Gun-heen, shouting, I don't know you. Get lost. The two thugs helped the leader and walked away. Let's go, the leader muttered, still holding his sore cheek in confusion. Did he take the wrong medicine? His classmate, panicking, said, Class president, this is bad. The class president, furious, shouted, What do you mean, bad? He pointed toward a familiar figure walking toward them. That guy is coming. The person was Lam Pham. He grabbed Gun-heen by the shirt and urged, Run, run quickly. Gun-heen simply grunted, If you run fast enough. Fine. At that moment, his phone rang. Surprised, he answered it. Lam Pham speaking. Hey, Nin Vu, what's going on? Nin Vu, driving, explained the situation. I have a friend who's suffering from a rare illness. No expert, domestic or international, has ever encountered anything like it. So, I'm hoping you can help. Lam Pham was taken aback. Treating an illness, he thought? I've never shown any medical skills. Why is he asking for my help? He asked, Why do you think I can help you? Nin Vu replied, It's because of Master Guy. He said you possess extraordinary abilities. The doctors are stumped by the condition and have given up. Lam Pham smiled wryly. I figured that's what Master Guy wanted, to test my abilities. Lam Pham then agreed. All right, I'll help. Come pick me up. Nin Vu nodded. I'll be there right away. On a quiet road, a black car sped toward them and stopped in front of him. He got into the car and said, Let's go. Tiu Nin looked at him through the rearview mirror and asked, Aren't you bringing any tools? Lam Pham waved his hand dismissively. No need. Let's go. 10 minutes later, the car stopped in front of a villa. Guarded by security, one of the guards greeted them. Welcome. Nin Vu led Lam Pham toward the house, saying, This way. Inside, they found a doctor using a machine to monitor the patient's heart rate. The monitor was showing the condition of the victim. Lam Pham realized something and thought, That machine is a heart rate monitor. It's showing the patient's status. Nin Vu and Lam Pham stood outside the patient's room, observing Kim Tien's critical condition. Nin Vu asked, Can you figure out what's wrong with him? Lam Pham slowly replied, It's just a minor issue. Let me take a look. As he entered the room, a doctor shouted, Tiu Nin, where did you find this guy? He's talking nonsense. Another doctor chimed in. Yeah, who does he think he is? Calling it a minor issue? Though angry, Lam Pham didn't argue. He slowly walked toward the bed, ignoring their comments. Stop right there. As Lam Pham approached, the doctors tried to stop him. I said stop. Didn't you hear me? Reaching his limit, Lam Pham pushed one of the doctors aside, coldly saying, Get out of the way. He scolded, You're in the way. Standing before the bed, he assessed the situation. Then he declared, If I had been a step late, it would have been harder to save him. But as it stands, it's not a big issue. He immediately began to act. The quack doctor tried to stop him but could only shout, Young man, stop. Lam Pham pressed several acupressure points on the patient's body. And suddenly, the heart rate monitor emitted a loud beep before showing a flat line. Lam Pham finished his work as well. He exhaled deeply. The other doctor screamed, Mr. Kim. Mr. Kim is dead. The bodyguards downstairs were shocked. What? They rushed upstairs, all aiming their guns at Lam Pham, shouting, Hands up. But Lam Pham remained calm. But before they could make a move, Nin Vu, who had been observing, suddenly noticed something. He was so shocked that words failed him. Then, a sudden sound of coughing broke the silence. At the sound, everyone turned in disbelief towards the hospital bed. It was indeed Mr. Kim, who had regained consciousness and was coughing. The heart rate monitor next to him began showing fluctuations. One of the doctors stared in shock and muttered, "How can this be possible? Mr. Kim's heart rate has returned to normal." At that moment, Lam Pham sighed and spoke. "It seems you have no faith in me after all. Fine, I'll leave." He turned and walked toward the door. "This person is not meant to be saved by me." But just then, a voice called out behind him. "Lam Divine Doctor, please wait." It was young Master Kim. Gasping for breath. "Earlier, we were blind. Please, I beg you, you must save my father." Lam Pham still refused. "I've already said I won't save him." Young Master Kim immediately dropped to his knees, bowing his head to the ground, and pleaded, "Please, you must save my father. Divine Doctor, we were disrespectful earlier. If you wish to punish someone, punish me. I won't hold any grudges. I just beg you to save my father." Tears streamed down his face as he spoke desperately. "Please, I beg you." The two doctors watching were stunned. The eldest son of the Kim family, one of the most influential families in the capital, was actually kneeling before someone else. It was an unbelievable sight. Lam Pham stared at him for a moment, then sighed and said, "All right, since you're showing such devotion, I'll let it go this time." He motioned for him to rise. Then, he snapped his fingers and lightly tapped young Master Kim on the forehead. Just then, another doctor rushed in, clearly flustered. It was Luong Quoc Dong. He hurriedly entered the room, opened the door, and asked, "How is Mr. Kim?" The quack doctor, upon seeing Luong Quoc Dong, suddenly became excited. "Dr. Luong, you're finally here. Look at this. There's this little brat who almost killed Mr. Kim with his treatment." He pointed at Lam Pham and began to talk him down. But when Luong Quoc Dong saw Lam Pham, he froze. You are." Without hesitation, he dropped the first aid kit and rushed forward to greet Lam Pham respectfully, as if he were an elder. "Master Lam, I've heard of your great reputation. I'm Luong Quoc Dong. It's an honor to meet you here." The two other doctors were left speechless, unable to comprehend why Luong Quoc Dong was showing such profound respect. Lam Pham, however, didn't seem to recognize him at first. He asked, "Who are you again?" Luong Quoc Dong replied, "I'm Luong Quoc Dong. Master Guy has introduced you to me." Lam Pham nodded, realizing who he was. "Ah, Master Guy. All right, let's get to business." He rolled up his sleeves. "Now, I'll save this person. Dr. Luong, come assist me." Luong Quoc Dong immediately agreed. "All right." Then Lam Pham suddenly stopped. "Oh, right," he said, turning to the two quack doctors. "Please have your two incompetent friends leave the room." The two bodyguards immediately nodded and obeyed the command. They grabbed the old man with white hair and the one with golden hair, dragging them out. The golden-haired man tried to protest, but before he could finish, thud, they were kicked out. "Ouch!" they shouted as they hit the floor. Lam Pham stood beside the bed and turned to young Master Kim. "Tell everyone else to leave as well," he ordered. Young Master Kim nodded. "Understood." He gestured to the bodyguards, who immediately bowed and left the room. The door was slammed shut. Lam Pham turned to Luong Quoc Dong. "Let's begin." He cracked his knuckles and looked at Mr. Kim lying in the bed. "Please help me apply pressure to the acupoints at Kukuyat and Chuangman." Luong Quoc Dong complied. "Got it." He pressed one acupoint with one hand, then used his other hand to apply pressure to the second acupoint. At that moment, Lam Pham shouted sharply, tightening his fist and delivering a powerful strike to Mr. Kim's chest. The strike caused Mr. Kim to cough up blood. His eyes bulging, he coughed violently. His body began to twitch uncontrollably. Luong Quoc Dong, panicked, shouted, "Lam Divine Doctor, something's wrong with Mr. Kim." His hands began to tremble as he stammered, I can't hold on much longer." Lam Pham quickly shouted, "Don't get distracted. Hold on tight." A powerful force surged into Mr. Kim's body, and black smoke began to escape from his mouth. His eyes turned bloodshot, and he coughed violently. "Now, let go," Lam Pham ordered. Luong Quoc Dong immediately released his grip, and Mr. Kim's body convulsed. A beam of white light shot out from his body and soared into the air. Whoosh! His body rose into the air, surrounded by a bluish-purple light. Quoc Dong was in a panic. "Dr. Lam, what's happening?" He looked at the smoke in front of him and coldly said, This is demonic energy invading Mr. Kim's body. Mr. Kim's illness was also caused by it. The demonic energy has now been dispelled. And Mr. Kim is fine. He reassured. Exhausted, the old man tightly shut his eyes. His brow furrowed. He slowly opened his eyes. In front of him stood young Master Kim. His eyes welling with tears as he called out, "Dad." Kwok Dong smiled at him as well. The old man weakly called out, "Kim Ni." He rushed over and embraced him, crying, "Dad, you've finally woken up. I'm so relieved." Still unsure of what had happened, the old man softly asked, "Kim Ni, what's going on?" He turned to look at the man and asked, "Was it this doctor who saved me?" The man quickly replied, "No, Mr. Kim, it was Master Lam who saved you. I only helped a little." He pointed to him. The old man's eyes filled with tears. Benefactor, benefactor, I am Kim Bak Van. Thank you for saving my life. I will never forget this kindness. If you ever need anything in the future, please feel free to ask," he said. Dr. Lam smiled gently and replied, "All right, Mr. Kim, how are you feeling now?" The old man raised his hand and joyfully said, "I feel much better now, though my waist is a bit sore and my back hurts." Young Master Kim quickly handed him a golden card, smiling as he said, "Dr. Lam, there's 1 billion in this card. I hope you'll accept it." Everyone behind them was stunned when they heard the amount. Stammering, 1 billion?